This is the Dive Into Discovery podcast, where curiosity meets insight, and every conversation uncovers a new layer of understanding.
Welcome to today's Dive Into Discovery. We're your hosts, Theo and Alex. And today we're going to be blasting off to explore the exciting and maybe even a little daunting topic of space colonization.
It certainly captures the imagination, doesn't it? The idea of humans living and working beyond Earth, building new societies on other planets. We're not just talking about short visits here. We're talking about establishing permanent settlements.
Yeah, it's wild to think about, right? You've been digging into the research on this. So what exactly does space colonization mean, according to the experts?
Well, the sources I looked at define it as creating self-sustaining human communities beyond Earth.
Okay.
Think of it as like establishing a new branch of humanity, not just an outpost.
Like the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock, but in space.
Exactly.
But where are we even thinking of putting down roots?
Well, Mars is often seen as the prime candidate, primarily because it's relatively close to Earth and has some Earth-like features, but the Moon is making a comeback as a potential stepping stone to further exploration.
I can see the appeal of both. Mars has that new frontier mystique, while the Moon feels a bit more manageable as a first step. Speaking of first steps, it seems like everyone's talking about Elon Musk and SpaceX these days. Are they really serious about getting to Mars?
Absolutely. SpaceX is developing a truly ambitious spacecraft called Starship,
Okay.
designed to transport both crew and cargo to Mars. What's remarkable is that Starship aims to be fully reusable, which could dramatically reduce the cost of space travel.
Reusable rockets. That sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie. It makes you wonder, what are the other big players like NASA up to these days?
Well, NASA is focusing on a project called the Lunar Gateway, a space station that will orbit the Moon. It's designed to be a base for lunar missions and could even serve as a hub for future missions to Mars.
So we've got these ambitious plans and incredible spacecraft being developed. But let's talk about the elephant in the room. How do we actually survive on a planet like Mars with its thin atmosphere?
That's where life support systems come in. We can't breathe Martian air, which is mostly carbon dioxide, so habitats would need to be completely sealed and generate their own breathable air. It's a monumental engineering challenge.
It makes those biodome experiments from the past look like child's play. And what about water? I can't imagine packing enough for a one-way trip to Mars.
Luckily, we've discovered that both Mars and the Moon have ice.
Really?
Which is a game changer.
Yeah.
Because water can be used for drinking, growing crops, and even creating rocket fuel.
Wow.
Imagine one day Martian colonists might be sipping on locally sourced water, right from the red planet.
Okay, now that's what I call sustainable living. But I have to ask, what about terraforming? Is there any chance we could actually transform Mars into a more Earth-like environment?
Terraforming is a fascinating concept, but it's incredibly complex and at this point, highly speculative. The idea is to thicken the Martian atmosphere and warm the planet, but the technology to achieve that is far beyond our current capabilities.
It sounds like we'll need to focus on creating habitats that can protect us from the harsh Martian environment for the foreseeable future. What are some of the biggest obstacles we need to overcome when it comes to keeping humans safe on Mars?
One of the major threats is radiation. Space is bombarded by cosmic rays and solar flares that can be incredibly harmful to human health. We'll need innovative shielding solutions, perhaps using Martian soil, called regolith, or even water as protective barriers. There's even research being done on using magnetic fields to deflect radiation.
Radiation shielding with magnets. Now that's thinking outside the box. What are some of the other major challenges we need to consider?
Gravity is another big one. Mars has about 38% of Earth's gravity, and we don't fully understand the long-term effects of this on the human body. It could impact muscle and bone density, cardiovascular health, and even our vision.
So we're talking about radiation, low gravity. It seems like a pretty hostile environment. How are we going to get all the supplies we need to build and maintain a colony on Mars? Are we talking about constant shipments from Earth?
Relying solely on Earth for resources would be incredibly expensive and logistically challenging. That's why scientists and engineers are focusing on in situ resource utilization, or ISRU. The idea is to use materials found on Mars to build and sustain the colony.
So living off the land, Martian style, what sorts of resources are we talking about here?
Well, Martian regolith can be used to 3D print structures, and we believe there might be water ice locked beneath the surface that could be extracted. There's also potential for mining minerals and metals that could be used in construction and manufacturing.
It's amazing to think about all the possibilities. But what about energy? We can't exactly rely on fossil fuels on Mars.
You're absolutely right. Sustainable energy sources are crucial. Solar power is a promising option considering the abundance of sunlight on Mars. There's also potential for nuclear power, which could provide a more reliable and powerful energy source.
It sounds like we're going to need some serious ingenuity to make this all work. Speaking of ingenuity, the International Space Station has been orbiting Earth for over 2 decades now. What have we learned from the ISS that could help us in colonizing Mars?
The ISS has been an invaluable testing ground for long-duration spaceflight. We've learned a great deal about recycling air and water, growing plants in microgravity, and even dealing with the psychological effects of isolation and confinement.
It's like a mini colony in space, paving the way for bigger things to come. But let's be realistic, sending people on a one-way trip to another planet is a massive undertaking, both physically and mentally. What are some of the psychological and social considerations we need to address?
You're hitting on a crucial point. Leaving Earth behind, knowing you might never return, would require incredible mental fortitude. The isolation and confinement of space travel could lead to anxiety, depression, and even interpersonal conflicts within the colony.
It's like a pressure cooker, but in space. Choosing the right people for this mission and preparing them mentally will be just as important as all the technical stuff.
Exactly. Selecting and training astronauts for long-duration missions is already a rigorous process, but preparing colonists for a one-way trip to Mars will require a whole new level of psychological and social screening. We need to ensure they can not only handle the technical challenges, but also thrive in a completely new and isolated environment.
And let's not forget about one of the most basic human needs, food. I imagine growing crops on Mars won't be as easy as planting a garden in your backyard.
It definitely won't. Space agriculture is a whole other frontier. We've seen experiments on the ISS where astronauts are growing lettuce and other vegetables in microgravity, but scaling that up to feed an entire colony will require innovative techniques and specialized greenhouses.
So we're talking about high-tech greenhouses that can mimic Earth's conditions on a planet with practically no atmosphere.
Exactly. We'll need to control the temperature, humidity, and light very precisely. And we might need to rely on hydroponics where plants are grown in nutrient-rich water instead of soil. There's even talk of developing genetically modified crops that are specifically adapted to the Martian environment.
It all sounds incredibly complex and expensive. Just out of curiosity, what kind of financial investment are we talking about here?
The estimated cost of establishing a self-sustaining colony on Mars is astronomical.
Yeah.
We're talking trillions of dollars easily.
Wow.
This raises some serious questions about who will foot the bill. Will it be governments, private companies, international consortiums? It's a massive undertaking that will likely require collaboration on a global scale.
Trillions of dollars. That makes you wonder if it's even realistic to expect this to happen anytime soon.
It's certainly a long shot, but there are some optimistic estimates suggesting we could have humans living on Mars by the 2030s.
Wow.
Others believe it's more realistic to think in terms of decades or even centuries. The technological, financial, and logistical challenges are immense.
It's a lot to consider, but I have to admit it's an incredibly exciting prospect. Is there anything that stands out to you as the most promising development in all of this?
I think for me, the most promising aspect is the potential for international collaboration. Space exploration has a way of bringing people together, transcending political and national boundaries. It's a shared human endeavor.
It's inspiring to think that we might be on the cusp of a new era of human unity, driven by our shared desire to explore the cosmos. But even with all this collaboration, we can't ignore the ethical implications of colonizing another planet, can we?
You raise a very important point. Some argue that pouring trillions of dollars into space exploration is irresponsible when we have so many pressing problems here on Earth.
Right.
They believe we should be focusing on solving issues like poverty, climate change, and disease before venturing off to other planets.
Yeah, I can see where they're coming from. It does seem a bit like we're jumping ship instead of fixing the problems on our own planet. Don't some people argue that space exploration could actually help us address those problems?
Absolutely. Proponents of space exploration argue that it drives technological innovation that can benefit humanity as a whole. For example, research into renewable energy sources for space colonies could lead to breakthroughs in clean energy production here on Earth.
So it's not necessarily an either situation.
Yeah.
Investing in space exploration could have positive ripple effects on our efforts to solve problems here on Earth.
Exactly. And let's not forget the potential for scientific discovery. Imagine the insights we could gain from studying Mars's geology, searching for signs of past or present life, or even just observing the universe from a completely different perspective.
It's mind-blowing to think about all the mysteries that are out there waiting to be unlocked. But let's get back to the practicalities for a moment. If we're talking about establishing a permanent human presence on Mars, we're essentially talking about creating a new society. What kind of skills and expertise would future colonists need to make this work?
It would require a diverse team of highly skilled and adaptable individuals. You definitely need engineers to design and build habitats, life support systems, and infrastructure. Medical professionals would be crucial for maintaining the physical and mental health of the colonists. And of course, we'd need agricultural experts to figure out how to grow food in these challenging environments.
It's like assembling the ultimate interplanetary crew. Are there any training programs or simulations that are already preparing people for these roles?
There are. Organizations like NASA and private companies are running simulations and training programs to prepare for long-duration space missions and colonization. They're studying everything from the psychological effects of isolation to the technical skills needed for operating advanced life support systems.
It sounds like astronaut boot camp, but on a whole new level. It makes you wonder what life would actually be like for these Martian pioneers. Would they be able to maintain contact with loved ones back on Earth? Would they have any leisure time?
Those are great questions. Communication would definitely be a challenge. Considering the vast distance between Earth and Mars, there would be significant time delays in messages, making real-time conversations impossible. Colonists would need to be prepared for a certain level of isolation and independence.
It's a bit like the early settlers crossing the ocean to the New World. They knew it would be a long and arduous journey, and they wouldn't be able to just pick up the phone and call home.
Precisely. And as for leisure time, it's important to remember that these colonists would be more than just scientists and engineers. They would be building a new society. And that would involve creating a new culture, finding ways to relax and have fun, and fostering a sense of community.
It's fascinating to think about how human culture might evolve in a completely different environment. Would they develop their own unique traditions and customs? Would they create their own art and music inspired by the Martian landscape?
It's impossible to say for sure, but that's part of the excitement of space colonization. We're not just talking about establishing a physical presence on another planet. We're talking about expanding the realm of human experience and creativity.
It's a bold vision, but it's not without its critics. Some people argue that we should be focusing on exploring our own solar system before venturing further into space. What are their concerns?
Well, they argue that we have so much to learn and discover right here in our own cosmic backyard. There are still countless mysteries within our solar system, from the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn to the asteroid belt and the dwarf planet Pluto. They believe we should be dedicating our resources to unraveling these secrets before setting our sights on interstellar travel.
I can understand that perspective. It's like saying, let's fully explore our own neighborhood before moving to a different city. But aren't there also compelling reasons to look beyond our solar system?
Absolutely. The search for extraterrestrial life is one of the most profound questions humans have ever asked. While it's possible that life exists elsewhere in our solar system, the vast distances between stars mean that other planetary systems offer a far greater chance of finding evidence of life beyond Earth.
It's like casting a wider net in the hopes of finding something truly extraordinary. But interstellar travel presents its own set of challenges. Even with our most advanced technology, it would take decades, if not centuries, to reach even the nearest star systems.
You're right. The distances involved are mind-boggling. That's why scientists are exploring concepts like generational ships, massive spacecraft designed to carry multiple generations of humans on a journey that could span hundreds or even thousands of years.
Generational ships. It sounds like something straight out of science fiction, but it raises some interesting questions. How would you prepare a crew for a journey that would last longer than their individual lifetimes? How would you ensure the survival and well-being of generations born and raised in the confines of a spacecraft?
It would be an unprecedented challenge, both technically and ethically. You'd need to create a self-sustaining ecosystem within the ship, capable of providing food, water, and oxygen for countless generations. You'd also need to address the psychological and social implications of raising generations in a completely artificial environment, cut off from the Earth they've never known.
It's a daunting prospect. But it's also a testament to the boundless potential of human ingenuity and our unyielding desire to explore the unknown. But let's bring it back down to Earth, so to speak. We've talked about the challenges and possibilities of space colonization, but I think the question on everyone's mind is it truly feasible this century?
That's the trillion-dollar question, literally. It's impossible to say for sure. There's so many variables, so many unknowns. But I believe it is possible, given enough time, resources, and international collaboration. Whether it's likely to happen within this century is another matter. It really depends on how much we prioritize it as a species.
So you're cautiously optimistic. But even if it takes longer than a century, the fact that we're even having this conversation is pretty incredible. It feels like we're on the cusp of a new era of exploration.
It really does. And even if we never establish permanent colonies on Mars or venture beyond our solar system, the technologies and knowledge we gain from pursuing these goals will have a ripple effect across other fields. From medicine to energy production to material science, it's an investment in the future, in more ways than one.
It's like we're standing on the shoulders of giants, looking up at the vastness of space and daring to dream of what's possible. But with great dreams come great responsibilities. As we venture further into the cosmos, we need to do so with wisdom, foresight, and a deep respect for the delicate balance of life, both here on Earth and potentially elsewhere in the universe.
I couldn't agree more. We're not just explorers, we're caretakers of our planet, and potentially the pioneers of a new era for humanity. The choices we make today will shape the course of our future among the stars.
It's both exhilarating and a little humbling to think about the potential impact of our choices as we venture into the cosmos. But you've given us a lot to consider today. So to wrap things up, is there one big question you'd leave our listener with to ponder as they continue exploring this topic on their own?
I think the most important question, the one that really gets to the heart of this whole endeavor, is this. What does it truly mean to be human in a multi-planetary era? If we establish settlements on other planets, will those colonists still consider themselves Earthlings? Will they develop their own unique identities and cultures shaped by their new environments? And how will our relationship with Earth evolve as we expand our presence beyond its atmosphere?
That's a profound question. It makes you realize that space colonization isn't just about technological advancements. It's about redefining our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe.
Exactly, and it raises a whole host of other questions about governance, ethics, and the very nature of humanity. Who will govern these new colonies? What rights and responsibilities will colonists have? And how will we ensure that the lessons we learn from our past mistakes on Earth aren't repeated as we expand into new worlds?
It's a lot to grapple with, but it's also incredibly exciting to be part of this conversation.
Yeah.
To witness humanity pushing the boundaries of what's possible. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into the future of space colonization.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listener, I encourage you to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep dreaming. The future of humanity among the stars is a story that's still being written, and it's up to all of us to shape its next chapter.
What did you think of this week's episode? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to join us next time as we dive even deeper. And as always, stay curious, because you never know what discoveries are just around the corner.